In our hyper-connected world, silence is a luxury, and a missed call is an obligation. We chase notifications, answer unknown numbers, fearing we might miss something vital. But some connections are better left broken. Some signals are warnings. Maya Sharma, a woman whose life revolved around the nuance of sound, was about to learn this lesson. Her meticulous digital world, built on waveforms and deadlines, was about to fracture under the weight of a single, unanswered call from a number that defied logic, a number she should never, ever have called back. Curiosity, they say, killed the cat. In the digital age, it can unleash something far worse. Let's begin the story. Get comfortable and listen closely. The glow of dual monitors cast long shadows across Maya Sharma's home studio. Outside, the city hummed its late-night lullaby, but inside, Maya's world was reduced to the microscopic imperfections of the human voice. A stray lip smack, a breath too sharp, the almost imperceptible hum of a refrigerator captured on a podcast host's microphone, these were the gremlins she hunted. As a freelance podcast editor, her reputation was built on clean audio and obsessive attention to detail. Tonight, editing an interview for a popular true crime podcast, Unsolved Whispers, she was deep in the zone, her high-end headphones cupping her ears, isolating her further in her sanctuary of sound. Her apartment, though small, was her fortress. Soundproofing panels lined one wall, testament to her profession and her need for controlled quiet. Cables snaked neatly from interfaces to monitors to her powerful editing rig. It was a space meticulously organized, a reflection of her own mind. Working remotely suited her introverted tendencies, but sometimes, especially late at night when the city slept and the only company was the disembodied voices in her ears, a pang of isolation hit. She pushed it down, focusing instead on a plosive pop on the word evidence. That's when her personal cell phone, lying face down on the desk beside her mixing board, vibrated silently. She ignored it. Probably spam. Or her mom forgetting the time difference again. 5 minutes later, it vibrated again. Then a third time, rapid succession. Annoyed, she paused the track, the sudden silence ringing slightly. She flipped the phone over. 3 missed calls. No voicemail. The number displayed on the screen made her frown. It wasn't just unfamiliar, it looked wrong. It started with an area code she didn't recognize, 001? Then followed by what seemed like 15 digits, interspersed with hyphens and, bizarrely, a couple of asterisks. 001 491 77-83012. It looked less like a phone number and more like a corrupted line of code. A prickle of unease mixed with irritation. Sophisticated spoofing, maybe? Some new tactic to bypass call blockers? She tapped the number, intending to block it, but hesitated. Her finger hovered over the screen. Professional curiosity, the same instinct that made her meticulously clean audio files, nudged her. What was that? She copied the string of digits and symbols and pasted it into a search engine on her laptop. The results were strange. Nothing concrete. No business listings, no reverse lookup hits. Instead, the search surfaced results from years old, obscure internet forums, dusty corners of the web dedicated to radio anomalies, number stations, and unexplained electronic phenomena. One thread, titled Glitch Numbers, Dead Airlines, caught her eye. Users described receiving calls from similarly malformed numbers. Most posts dismissed them as telco errors or elaborate hoaxes. But a few entries spoke of a chilling persistence, of calls that connected to nothing but static, or faint, unsettling sounds. One user mentioned feeling watched through their phone after trying to investigate such a number. Another referenced operator lines that shouldn't exist anymore. Most threads trailed off, the original posters vanishing or abandoning the topic. Maya scoffed, closing the browser tab. Creepypasta nonsense, she muttered, stretching in her chair. It was late. She was tired, probably letting her imagination run wild after hours spent editing tales of unsolved disappearances. It was just a glitchy spam call, technologically more elaborate than usual, but nothing more. She blocked the number on her phone, feeling a small sense of order restored. She returned to her editing, excising the offending plosive, the strange number already fading from her conscious thought. The next day dawned bright and busy. Maya juggled deadlines, corresponded with clients, and took a brief walk to clear her head. Her phone remained blessedly silent, reinforcing her belief that the previous night's calls were a fluke. She spent the afternoon deep cleaning audio for a historical podcast, meticulously removing background noise from archival recordings. By evening, She felt productive, the weirdness forgotten. She was preparing dinner, chopping vegetables while listening to a synthwave playlist on her kitchen smart speaker, when her phone, charging on the counter, lit up. Her heart gave an unpleasant jolt. It was the same number. 00149177-83012. Unblocked. How? Had she forgotten to confirm the block? Or had it somehow bypassed it? It rang twice, then stopped. Again, no voicemail. A chill traced its way up her spine, unrelated to the evening air. The persistence was unnerving. Blocking should have worked. Why call again? And why this specific, bizarre format? What did it want? The lack of a message felt deliberate, almost taunting. She picked up the phone, staring at the notification. The rational part of her brain screamed ignore it. It's designed to provoke a reaction. But the other part, the meticulous editor, the detail-obsessed researcher, the part fueled by late-night isolation and a professional fascination with anomalous sound, whispered a different suggestion. What if it wasn't spam? What if it was some strange broadcast signal, an electronic phantom bleeding through the network? What would happen if she just called it back? Just once. To see what it was. To solve the puzzle. The silence from the line felt like a question hanging in the air, waiting for her answer. The unanswered call felt like an untidy loose end in her carefully curated digital life. The urge to know, to categorize, to understand, began to outweigh her caution. It was just a phone call, after all. What harm could it really do? The logical part of Maya's brain was losing the battle. The number sat there on her call log, an insistent, illogical puzzle box. Blocking hadn't worked. Ignoring it felt incomplete. The silence on the other end was almost louder than a ringing phone. Was it a technical artifact? A misconfigured autodialer from some defunct satellite? Her work involved dissecting sound, understanding its origins and anomalies. Maybe this was just the ultimate audio enigma bleeding into her daily life. A flicker of loneliness, sharp and unwelcome, added fuel to the fire. Ben was busy tonight, immersed in a coding project. Her family was asleep on the other coast. The apartment felt cavernous, the only sounds the hum of a refrigerator and the distant city traffic. Just one call. What could it hurt? She wouldn't even use her real number. She downloaded a burner phone app, quickly setting up a temporary, anonymous number. A flimsy shield, perhaps, but it felt safer. She took a deep breath, the scent of half-chopped onions sharpened the air. Her finger hovered over the call button within the app. It felt illicit, like clicking a forbidden link. She rationalized, this is research. Understanding signal anomalies. With a final surge of combined frustration, professional curiosity, and that gnawing isolation, she tapped the screen. There was no dial tone. No ringing. Not even a click of connection. One moment, silence. The next, her ear was assaulted by an overwhelming wall of sound erupting from the phone speaker, far louder than the burner app's volume setting should have allowed. It wasn't simple white noise. It was complex static, thick and layered, like dozens of radio stations overlapping in a chaotic roar. Beneath the main hiss, there was a rapid, almost insectal clicking, arrhythmic and sharp. Lower still, a deep, pulsing hum resonated, a vibration she could almost feel in her teeth. And woven through it all, almost subliminal, were whispers. Distorted, fleeting fragments of what might have been speech, but pitched wrong, sped up or slowed down, sometimes sounding unnervingly like reversed audio tracks. It was the sound of 1,000 broken connections, a digital scream trapped in the wires. Maya recoiled, snatching the phone away from her ear, her heart hammering against her ribs. The sound filled her small kitchen, harsh and invasive. It lasted maybe 5, 6 seconds, an eternity of sonic chaos, and then, as abruptly as it began, it cut off. Dead air. The call disconnected. She stood frozen, phone clutched in her hand, the phantom noise still echoing in her ears. Her carefully controlled environment felt violated. That sound. It wasn't natural. It wasn't like any equipment malfunction or signal interference she'd ever encountered in her years of professional audio work. It felt structured, almost intentional in its complexity. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. Shaken, she deleted the burner app, scrubbing its data. A futile gesture, she suspected. The connection had been made. The call had gone through. Almost immediately, her phone began acting strangely. The battery icon, fully green moments before, suddenly plummeted to 40%. Apps she hadn't opened flickered onto the screen before vanishing. She tried to call Ben, needing a rational voice, but the call quality was atrocious. His voice came through muffled, punctuated by bursts of faint, crackling static, not the complex roar she'd heard, but a thin, persistent echo of it. "Maya? You there? Line's terrible," Ben's voice crackled. "Ben, something weird just happened," she started, but the line dissolved into a hiss and disconnected. Panic began to set in. She forced herself to be methodical. Reboot the phone. Check for malware using 3 different security apps. Nothing detected. Check her carrier's network status online, no reported outages. Check her Wi-Fi strong signal, router functioning normally. Everything looked fine on the surface. But her phone felt tainted. The battery continued to drain at an alarming rate. Notifications would pop up blank, then disappear. The touchscreen occasionally became unresponsive. She plugged the phone in, watching the battery percentage struggle to climb. The silence in the apartment now felt heavy, watchful. Had she just invited something in? That sound. It wasn't just noise. It felt like listening to something vast and broken, something ancient and decaying lurking just beneath the surface of the digital world. She thought back to the forum posts, feeling watched through the phone. She glanced at the dark screen of her device, a cold dread creeping into her soul. What had she done? The simple act of calling back, driven by curiosity, suddenly felt like opening a door she could never close. The static wasn't just something she'd heard, it felt like something she'd connected to. And it wasn't letting go. Sleep offered little respite. Maya jolted awake several times, convinced she heard the faint clicking sound from the call, or the whisper of static from her phone on the nightstand. By morning, exhaustion warred with a growing anxiety that felt like a low-grade electrical current humming beneath her skin. Her phone, miraculously fully charged, seemed normal at first glance. But the feeling of violation lingered. She tried to focus on work, immersing herself in the familiar rhythms of editing. She loaded the raw audio files for a new episode of a meditation podcast, calming voices, gentle soundscapes. Perfect. Except, as she listened intently through her professional-grade headphones, she heard it. A tiny click, almost imperceptible, nestled between the host's soothing words. Exactly like the clicking from the static call. She frowned, scrubbing back the audio. Isolating the section. There it was again. It wasn't on the waveform, no visual indicator. But she heard it. Clear as day. She double-checked the source file on a separate, offline device. Clean. No click. She played the section back through her main editing rig. The click was there. Subtle, invasive. Later, editing a different project, a straightforward interview, she heard a fleeting wisp of that layered static, like a radio signal bleeding through for a fraction of a second. Again, nothing on the waveform. It was as if the sounds were manifesting directly in her playback system, ghosts in the machine audible only to her trained ears. Then came the calls. Her phone rang, displaying her own number. Confused, she answered. Silence. Then a click, and the line went dead. Minutes later, the notification popped up, new voicemail. Hesitantly, she accessed it. It wasn't silence. It was that sound. The complex, layered static, the insectal clicking, the low hum. But this time, embedded deep within the noise, almost buried, was a distorted snippet of her own voice. "Hello? Is anyone there?" The words she'd instinctively spoken into the burner app right before the static hit. Hearing her own voice mangled and regurgitated from that sonic abyss sent a fresh wave of nausea through her. Then, the original strange number called again. 00149177-83012. This time, she didn't answer. It went straight to voicemail. Another message. Same static. Same clicking hum. This time, mixed into the noise, were distorted fragments of Ben's voice from their broken call the previous night. "Maya? Line's terrible." It was learning. Mimicking. She started receiving text messages. Some appeared to be from her own number, containing only random strings of symbols, like #%. Or fragments of the weird number itself, 491. Others were corrupted MMS messages that failed to load, displaying only placeholder icons and error messages. Her digital space was becoming littered with this electronic debris. The final straw came when she plugged her expensive studio headphones directly into her laptop's audio jack, without any audio playing. Just silence. Or, it should have been silence. Instead, faint clicks and whispers, impossibly quiet but undeniably there, emanated from the drivers. The sound wasn't coming through the system, it felt like it was originating within the hardware itself. She couldn't rationalize this away anymore. This wasn't malware in the traditional sense. This wasn't network interference. This was something else. Something persistent, invasive, and focused entirely on her. She needed Ben. She called him, her hands trembling slightly. Miraculously, the call connected cleanly this time. "Ben? I need your help. Seriously." She explained everything, starting with the weird number, the callback, the horrifying static, the phone glitches, the phantom calls and voicemails, the auditory artifacts bleeding into her work, even the whispers in her unplugged headphones. She tried to keep her voice steady, objective, laying out the facts like she was analyzing a faulty audio file. Ben listened patiently, his voice calm and reassuring on the other end. "Okay, deep breaths, Maya. That sounds really weird and stressful. But there's gotta be a logical explanation." He launched into troubleshooting mode, the tech-savvy friend trying to impose order on chaos. "It could still be a really sophisticated piece of malware," he suggested. "Something that burrowed deeper than standard scans can detect. Or maybe your SIM card got corrupted or cloned somehow. That could explain calls from your own number." He talked about network routing issues, crosstalk interference from poorly shielded equipment nearby, even psychoacoustics, her brain playing tricks on her due to stress and her focus on sound. "I checked all that, Ben," Maya insisted, frustration mounting. "The network is fine. My security scans are clean. I even swapped to an old backup phone for an hour, the weird text still came through to my main number. And the sounds in my headphones? When nothing is playing. How do you explain that?" Okay, Ben conceded, his tone shifting slightly. He knew how meticulous Maya was, how attuned her ears were. If she was hearing things this consistently, it wasn't just imagination. "Let's try a few things systematically. Bring your phone over. We'll do a full factory reset, wipe everything. We can try a brand new SIM card. We can monitor your network traffic, see if there's any unusual data packet activity." He offered practical solutions, a digital exorcism kit. Maya felt a sliver of hope. Ben was smart. Maybe he could find the logical flaw, the technical glitch that explained everything. But deep down, the memory of that layered, whispering static, the feeling of a connection established, whispered a colder truth. This wasn't a bug. It was a feature. And she was the target. The troubleshooting felt like applying bandages to a phantom limb. The problem wasn't just in the phone anymore. It was on the line. Ben's methodical troubleshooting provided temporary reassurance but yielded no answers. The factory reset seemed to work for about half a day before the glitches subtly returned. The new SIM card made no difference, the phantom texts addressed to her number persisted. Monitoring her network traffic showed occasional unusual spikes, but the data packets were heavily encrypted or routed through nonsensical IP addresses that led nowhere. Ben, though increasingly puzzled, still clung to the possibility of an extremely complex, targeted hack. Then came the phone call that shattered his skepticism. Maya was attempting to work, the faint, phantom clicks now an almost constant companion in her audio playback, forcing her to double and triple check every edit. Her phone rang. The caller ID displayed Ben Carter, complete with his contact picture. "Hey," she answered, relieved to hear his voice. "Hey Maya," the voice on the other end replied. It sounded like Ben, mostly. But there was a subtle flatness to the tone, a lack of the usual warmth. And underneath his words, almost subliminal, was that faint, familiar static hiss. "Just checking in. Did you finish editing the water file?" Maya frowned. "The water file? What are you talking about?" She wasn't working on anything related to water. "You know," the voice continued, unnervingly patient. "The one with the dripping. You said you needed it quiet. Very quiet." A cold dread washed over Maya. She hadn't said anything like that to Ben. The phrasing felt slightly off, like an AI trying to mimic casual conversation. "Ben, are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine," the voice replied, still flat. "Just wanted to know about the quiet file. The dripping. It's important." There was a pause, filled only by the low static. "Did you call the number back again?" Maya's blood ran cold. "What? No. Why would you ask that?" "Just wondering," the voice said. Then, abruptly, the line filled with a burst of the loud, complex static she'd heard on the initial callback, just for a second, before going completely dead. Shaking, Maya immediately redialed Ben's actual number. He picked up on the second ring, sounding perfectly normal. "Maya? What's up? You just called me." She almost yelled. "You asked about a water file and if I called the number back. You sounded really weird." There was a pause on Ben's end. "Maya, I haven't called you in hours. I've been deep in this coding problem." "What are you talking about?" Water file? The denial was absolute, genuine. Maya felt the floor drop out from under her. It hadn't been Ben. It had been it. The entity. Mimicking him. Using his caller ID. The technological gaslighting was terrifyingly effective. It wasn't just glitching her devices, it was actively impersonating people she trusted, sowing confusion and paranoia. This incident spurred Maya into a frantic new round of research, Ben now fully convinced and assisting with a grim determination. They dove deeper into the obscure forums, searching for terms like crosstalk, operator, signal mimic, voice parasite. The stories they found were fragmented, often dismissed as delusions or hoaxes by moderators, but a pattern emerged. People described calling back strange numbers, often with similar malformed structures. Initial glitches escalated to voice mimicry, first distorted, then becoming disturbingly accurate. The entity seemed to learn from every interaction, every data stream it could access. Victims reported feeling isolated, their friends and family doubting their sanity as the mimicry became more convincing. Some posts mentioned the entity accessing personal information, using intimate details in its impersonations. Several threads ended abruptly, the original posters simply disappearing from the forum. During this deep dive, Maya stumbled upon a series of archived local news articles from a small town in upstate New York, dating back about 15 years. They detail the bizarre cluster of electronic disturbances, malfunctioning phone lines, phantom calls, scrambled radio signals. The police had investigated, led by a Detective Miller. Residents reported hearing strange voices on the line, sometimes mimicking loved ones. Miller's investigation ultimately went cold, officially attributed to faulty wiring in an old telephone switching station and potential mass hysteria. But one article quoted Miller off the record, expressing doubts, mentioning something intelligent on the lines that defied technical explanation. The location was near a decommissioned Cold War listening post, known locally for strange electronic fog and interference. Could this be related? Was Detective Miller still around? A quick search yielded nothing recent. The digital footprint of the entity was becoming clearer, too. Ben managed to capture some of the anomalous data packets during a mimicry attempt. Tracing them was a nightmare, bouncing through proxy servers in Russia, defunct academic networks in Europe, and finally hitting dead ends at IP addresses assigned to obsolete telecommunication hubs, some linked to the same geographic area as Detective Miller's investigation. Maya also noticed her online experience warping. Ads served to her became bizarrely specific, referencing the false conversations the mimics had initiated. After the fake Ben call, she saw ads for plumbing services, stop the dripping, and noise-canceling headphones, find your quiet place. Her social media feed subtly shifted, prioritizing content about communication breakdowns, paranoia, and signal anomalies. It was harvesting her data, her conversations, even her reactions, and weaving them into its psychological assault. It wasn't just mimicking, it was learning her fears, her triggers. The crosstalk was tightening its grip, not just on her devices, but on her perception of reality itself. The fragile boundary between Maya's phone and the rest of her digital life dissolved completely. The entity, the crosstalk, was no longer just knocking at the door, it had invited itself in and made itself comfortable across her entire home network. The callback hadn't just established a phone connection, it had opened a back door, a persistent parasitic link. It started subtly, then escalated with frightening speed. Her smart speaker in the living room, usually dormant unless summoned, began activating randomly. At first, it was just static bursts, that specific, layered static, cutting through the quiet apartment. Then, it started whispering. Fragments of mimicked voices, mostly hers or Ben's, sometimes snippets from the podcasts she edited. Hello? Line's terrible. Needed quiet. The phrases were disjointed, nonsensical, but hearing them echo from the inert plastic cylinder on her bookshelf was deeply unsettling. One evening, while Maya was trying to lose herself in a movie on her laptop, the integrated webcam light flicked on. No application was using it. She frantically checked her running processes, her security software. Nothing. The tiny green light glowed accusingly for about 30 seconds, then flickered off. Was it watching her? Learning her expressions, her routines? The feeling of being under constant, ambient electronic surveillance intensified, pressing down on her like a physical weight. Her work became a minefield. Files stored on her cloud drive started corrupting spontaneously. An important project file for unsolved whispers, hours of meticulous editing, suddenly refused to open, citing data errors. When she checked the file's access logs via the cloud provider's interface, She found entries from unrecognized devices with IP addresses that traced back to those same defunct switching stations and international relays Ben had found earlier. It wasn't just listening, it was actively sabotaging her professional life. Sleep became a luxury she could rarely afford. Phantom phone vibrations jolted her awake in the dark. The faint static whispers sometimes seemed to emanate not from a device, but from the air itself, like auditory hallucinations born of stress and fear. She unplugged the smart speaker, covered her laptop webcam with tape, double-checked that her phone was off, truly off, not just asleep. But the feeling of intrusion persisted. She began to distrust every notification tone, every email alert, every flicker of light on her modem. Her meticulous nature, usually a source of stability, now fed her paranoia. Was that flicker normal? Was that faint buzz just the refrigerator, or something else? The chaos the crosstalk introduced was a direct assault on her sanity. She tried explaining the escalating situation to her mother during a brief, fraught video call. Halfway through, her own video feed froze, dissolving into pixelated blocks. Then, for a horrifying second, her image was replaced by a swirling pattern of gray static, and a distorted voice, a grotesque blend of hers and something electronic, rasped, "Nobody believes you." Before the image snapped back to normal, leaving her staring, aghast, at her mother's confused and concerned face on the screen. The final shred of doubt Ben might have harbored evaporated during one of their own video calls. They were discussing potential countermeasures, Maya huddled in her chair, looking pale and exhausted. Suddenly, Maya's audio cut out. Her image on Ben's screen froze, then glitched violently. Her mouth moved, but instead of her voice, Ben heard the layered static, punctuated by clicks, and then a perfectly mimicked, chillingly calm version of Maya's voice said, "He can't help you, Ben. You're connected now too." The call abruptly dropped. Ben sat stunned, the words echoing in the sudden silence. He frantically called Maya back on her phone. She answered, sounding panicked. "Did you hear that? Did you see that?" "I heard it, Maya," Ben said, his voice tight with a fear that finally matched hers. "I heard it." It wasn't just targeting Maya anymore. By interacting with her, by trying to help, Ben had become part of the equation. The signal was spreading through association, through connection. The crosstalk wasn't just a parasite feeding on one host, it was seeking to infect the network, both technological and human. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. They weren't just fighting for Maya's sanity and digital life anymore. They were fighting something that wanted to spread, and Ben was now directly in its path. The realization that Ben was now potentially entangled galvanized them. The passive approach of blocking and troubleshooting was clearly insufficient. They needed to understand the enemy, to find its source, or at least its weakness. Their source-hunting efforts became more focused, more desperate. Ben, leveraging his tech skills, attempted deep network forensics, trying to pinpoint a consistent origin point for the intrusions and mimicry attacks. It was like chasing smoke. The crosstalk used sophisticated masking techniques, routing its signals through layers of compromised servers, defunct satellite relays, and anonymous VPNs. It seemed deliberately designed to be untraceable. However, patterns emerged. Certain IP addresses, though masked, frequently resolved to servers physically located near the area Detective Miller had investigated, that region upstate known for its electronic fog and the old Cold War listening post. Was there a physical nexus? A piece of decaying infrastructure that acted as an antenna or a breeding ground for this thing? They spent hours trawling through digitized archives, searching for information on the listening post, old telecommunication maps of the area, any unusual geological or atmospheric phenomena reported there. They found mentions of Project Sanguine, an old Navy ELF communication system rumored to have unforeseen side effects, and whispers of experimental signal intelligence programs abandoned after the Cold War. Nothing concrete, but enough to fuel speculation. Their theorizing about the nature of the crosstalk intensified. Was it a ghost in the machine, the uploaded consciousness of someone trapped and corrupted within the network's infrastructure? Perhaps Miller himself, still trying to communicate from the digital ether? Or was it something more alien, a purely digital parasite that evolved in the complex soup of global communications? Ben leaned towards a form of weaponized signal, perhaps an electronic warfare experiment gone rogue, now propagating uncontrollably. Maya, haunted by the whispers and the feeling of ambient surveillance, sometimes wondered if it was a glitch in reality itself, bleeding through the technology that had become ubiquitous. Its methods were becoming terrifyingly clear. Establish connection, the callback was the key, the handshake that opened the door. Learn, it absorbed data, voice patterns, personal information, communication styles, Fears, through the established link and accessed accounts. Mimic and manipulate, it used learned data to impersonate, confuse, gaslight, and psychologically destabilize the target. Spread, it attempted to infect connected devices and potentially even associated contacts, like Ben. Corrupt, it actively damaged digital assets, threatening livelihood and security. But its ultimate goal remained terrifyingly opaque. Was it simply trying to replicate, like a virus? Was it feeding on the fear and chaos it created? Or was it trying to override its victims' digital existence entirely, replacing them with its own static-filled echo? The mimicry, terrifyingly, reached near perfection. One evening, Maya received an email seemingly from a major client, praising her recent work but requesting urgent revisions on a file she knew she had submitted correctly. The tone was slightly too effusive, the technical request subtly flawed. Recognizing the pattern, she called the client directly, using a neighbor's phone, paranoid about her own. The client had sent no such email and confirmed the original file was perfect. The crosstalk was now actively trying to ruin her professional reputation with precision attacks. The cruelest blow came late one night. Her phone screen lit up with a call. The caller ID showed a name Maya hadn't seen in years, a name that still caused a pang of grief, Daniel. Her fiancé, who had passed away in a car accident 3 years prior. Her heart seized. It had to be the entity. But the hope, the desperate, irrational flicker that it might somehow be real, made her hand tremble as she answered. Maya? The voice was Daniel's. Not flat or distorted. It was him. The exact cadence, the warmth, the way he used to say her name. Tears welled in her eyes. Maya, I miss you so much. Daniel? How? She whispered, caught between hope and terror. It's complicated, May, the voice continued, using his pet name for her. I found a way. A signal. I just wanted to hear your voice. It played on every vulnerability, every memory gleaned from years of emails, photos, maybe even old voicemails stored somewhere in the cloud. It spoke of shared memories, inside jokes. For a few agonizing minutes, Maya allowed herself to believe. Then, the voice shifted subtly. But you have to do something for me, May. You have to keep the line open. Don't hang up. Never hang up. Call the other number again. The first one. It strengthens the signal. It helps me stay here. The illusion shattered. The warmth in the voice became a cold manipulation. It wasn't Daniel. It was the crosstalk, wearing his voice like a mask, using her deepest grief as a weapon to ensure its own survival, to trick her into reinforcing the connection. With a choked sob, Maya ended the call, throwing the phone across the room. The entity knew her completely now. It knew how to break her. The Daniel mimicry was the breaking point. The crosstalk wasn't just a nuisance or a threat to her livelihood, it was a violation of her memory, her grief, her very soul. It had gone too far. Maya knew then that containment wasn't enough. Troubleshooting was futile. She had to sever the connection completely, violently if necessary. This thing wasn't going to stop until it had consumed her digital life, her sanity, and perhaps something more. The entity seemed to sense her resolve, launching its most aggressive assault yet. It wasn't subtle anymore, it was a full-blown electronic siege. All her devices erupted simultaneously. Her laptop screen filled with blinding static, the webcam light blinking erratically. Her smart speaker shrieked, blasting the layered static at deafening volume, punctuated by distorted screams that sounded terrifyingly human. Her phone cycled rapidly through apps, screen flashing, sending garbled messages to everyone in her contacts list. Lights in her apartment flickered, controlled by smart plugs she'd forgotten were on the network. Then, a new message appeared on her laptop screen, overriding the static, typed out in a simple, stark font, accessing work server. Distributing Maya_Sharma_edit_final_corrupted.m.p. 3 to client list. It was trying to detonate her career in real time. Simultaneously, a text message arrived on her phone, seemingly from Ben's number. Maya. Hurry. It's in my system. Meet me at the old relay tower off Route 17. Bring your phone. We can FRY the source here. It was lure. Route 17 was near the area of the decommissioned listening post. It knew they had been researching it. It was trying to draw her out, using a perfect mimic of Ben's urgency, leading her towards its presumed nexus, likely into a trap. No, Maya breathed, ignoring the cacophony, her mind racing. Blocking the number hadn't worked. Factory resets were temporary. The connection was deeper, more fundamental. It wasn't tied to just one device or account, it was tied to her, initiated by that first callback. She needed to perform a complete digital amputation. "Ben," she yelled into her phone, hoping he could hear her over the electronic din assaulting her apartment. "It's trying to lure me out. Don't trust any messages. We need to cut it off. Everything." Ben, safe for the moment at his own place but hearing the chaos faintly over their miraculously still open voice channel, understood immediately. Digital exile, Maya. Now. Kill it all. Their plan, hastily formed over previous panicked conversations, was drastic. Physical destruction, her primary smartphone, the one that received the initial calls, the one that made the callback, had to be destroyed. Not wiped, destroyed. Along with its SIM card. It was the initial point of infection. Network isolation, shut down her home Wi-Fi router completely. Disconnect the modem from the wall. Cut off its main pathway into her network. Device wipe and discard every device that had been connected to her network since the first call, laptop, smart speaker, tablets, even potentially dumb devices with network capabilities she hadn't considered, needed to be factory reset while offline, and ideally, physically removed from her apartment for a time. Some might need to be discarded entirely. Account annihilation and rebuild, from a completely clean, isolated device, Ben's work laptop, perhaps, brought over carefully, change every single password for every online account she possessed, starting with email and financial institutions, enabling multi-factor authentication everywhere possible using a brand new, basic, non-smartphone acquired after the purge. It was a scorched earth approach to her digital life. As Maya started enacting the plan, the crosstalk fought back with feral intensity. The sonic assault from the speaker became physically painful, high-pitched squeals mixing with the static. Her laptop screen flashed distorted images, grotesque faces momentarily forming in the visual noise, mouths open in silent screams. The lights in her apartment flickered violently, threatening to short out. The fake Ben messages became more frantic, pleading, then threatening. Ignoring the lure, ignoring the chaos, Maya grabbed her primary smartphone. She took a hammer from her small toolkit. The screen showed the fake text from Ben urging her to the relay tower. With a cry mixing fear and fury, she brought the hammer down. The screen spiderwebbed. She hit it again, and again, the crunch of glass and plastic a perversely satisfying counterpoint to the electronic screaming. She ripped the back off, pulled out the SIM card, and snapped it in half. She ran to the router and modem, yanking power cords from the wall. The shrieking smart speaker abruptly fell silent. The lights stopped flickering. The chaotic messages stopped. The sudden silence was profound, deafening. Her apartment, usually humming with the low thrum of technology, felt unnervingly still. Her laptop screen was dark. Her destroyed phone lay on the floor. She sank to her knees amidst the wreckage, breathing heavily. The immediate assault was over. But the cost was immense. Her digital life, her work tools, her connections, all shattered or needing a painstaking rebuild from ground zero. Had it worked? Had she truly cut the line? Or had she just pruned a weed whose roots ran deeper than she could ever reach? The silence felt less like peace and more like holding her breath, waiting for the next, inevitable noise. The silence held. Days turned into weeks, marked by the painstaking process of rebuilding a digital existence from scratch. Ben was invaluable, helping Maya acquire a basic flip phone, no internet, no apps, just calls and texts, and setting up new, secure email accounts from a pristine library computer. Her apartment felt alien without the constant connectivity, the smart devices replaced by old-fashioned lamps and a simple radio. Her expensive editing rig and laptop were wiped clean multiple times by Ben, eventually deemed potentially salvageable but quarantined for months. Her cloud storage was abandoned, gigabytes of work and personal files sacrificed as potentially corrupted beyond repair. The financial and professional fallout was significant. She lost clients due to the disruption and the inability to immediately recover work files. Explaining the situation was impossible. My life was invaded by a parasitic digital entity triggered by a weird phone call wasn't something people understood or believed. She told clients she'd suffered a catastrophic hardware failure and data loss, taking the hit to her reputation. Slowly, meticulously, Maya began to piece things back together, but differently. She worked reduced hours, taking on smaller, less demanding projects she could manage with basic software on a new, modestly powered laptop kept strictly offline unless absolutely necessary for file transfers via physical drives. Her relationship with technology was fundamentally altered. Every notification sound from her new flip phone made her jump. She avoided public Wi-Fi, covered the camera on her new laptop, and regarded smart devices with deep suspicion. The internet, Once her workspace and connection to the world, now felt like a hostile territory, riddled with potential traps. The trauma had carved deep lines, leaving behind a permanent residue of techno-paranoia. She and Ben talked often, mostly on her simple flip phone or in person. He had experienced no further direct intrusions after Maya's digital exile, suggesting the primary connection was indeed severed. But the experience had marked him too. He became more security conscious, more wary of the invisible signals filling the airwaves. They never spoke of the mimicry, especially not the Daniel incident. Some wounds were too deep to revisit. Months passed. Autumn bled into winter. Maya found a certain peace in her enforced low-tech life. The quiet was initially unnerving, but gradually became a comfort. She read physical books, listened to the radio, reconnected with the tangible world in a way she hadn't in years. The phantom clicks and static whispers faded from her perception, replaced by the normal sounds of the city and her own breathing. Perhaps, she thought, she had actually won. Perhaps the operator, the crosstalk, whatever it was, needed that active connection, that digital tether, to maintain its presence in her life. Cutting the line had starved it. One crisp December afternoon, she needed to make an important call to reschedule a doctor's appointment. Her flip phone's battery was dead, she often forgot to charge it now. Annoyed but resigned, she walked down the street to a relic she hadn't used in over a decade, a public payphone standing stubbornly on a street corner. She fished a quarter from her pocket, the cold metal unfamiliar in her hand. She lifted the heavy receiver, grimacing slightly at the greasy plastic, and listened for the dial tone. It hummed reassuringly. She punched in the familiar numbers for the doctor's office. The call was connecting. She heard the faint clicks and beeps of the network routing her call. And then, just for a fraction of a second, nestled between the final routing click and the first ring on the other end, she heard it. Faint. Almost subliminal. But unmistakable to her trained ears. That static. Layered. Complex. With the faintest, almost imagined, insectal clicking underneath. It vanished instantly as the phone on the other end began to ring, the receptionist's cheerful voice answering a moment later. Maya stammered through her request to reschedule, her blood running cold, her hand gripping the receiver tightly. The call ended. She hung up the phone, the plastic receiver clattering back into its cradle. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, the sounds of traffic and pedestrians fading into a dull roar. It hadn't been tied to her network. It wasn't just her connection. It was in the lines. Dormant, perhaps. Waiting. Part of the vast, invisible infrastructure that connected everyone. She had severed her personal link, escaped its direct attention, but it was still out there. An anomaly in the global network, a ghost in the wires, listening for the echo of curiosity, waiting for the next person to ignore the warnings, to dial the number they should never call back. The dial tone hummed innocently from the payphone beside her. An invitation. A threat. Maya turned and walked away quickly, not looking back, the silence of her own life suddenly feeling very fragile again. Enjoyed this story? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.